You know, you've heard tonight a lot of, from the seminary, and, the guys learn, and they graduate from seminary, send them out to the facilities. What I want to show you is what actually happens once they get onto the facility. Because I think I have the best job in the business. I get to watch it happen. I get to watch those field ministers make a difference in people's lives every day. And I'm kind of an expert on this, and I'll tell you why. My mother raised 4 boys. At one time, she was raising us by herself. We were struggling. We were poor. 3 of us took on a Christian life. We spent a lot of time with our grandfather and learning good Christian values. We went into law enforcement or corrections. 1 went to prison 3 times. And we were raised by the same good parents. And I just wish that this program would have been available about 20 years ago when he was doing that, because he was killed in 2007. And if this would have been available to him, I really think it may have changed his life. And now I just have to, I'm left wondering sometimes, did he talk to God, before he passed away? So I'm pretty passionate. I'm a passionate warden about changing people's lives and putting them back in society. And I spent a lot of time, Brother Grove come down to the Beto unit when I was over there for a year before I went to Coffield, and we spent some time with the field ministers. And I'm going to tell you, I thought it was going to be difficult. When those 4 men stepped off of the bus, I did just what Grove said. I met them, but I had prayed the night before. I said, God, how do I get the staff on board with field ministers? How am I going to get the staff to let these guys go do what they learned in seminary? And, it's funny because God took care of all of it. I showed up at work that morning, and I had a staff meeting. And I took the field ministers to my staff meeting. And I let them introduce themselves to all the department heads. And then I got to thinking about it when I left the staff meeting. I said, well, how am I going to get the correctional officers on board? Well, I'm the warden. So I took them to turnout, and I let them talk to the correctional staff. And I was a little bit nervous, I'll admit to that, because I thought, I just wasn't thinking right. I thought, if these guys go out here and they start walking those runs and they start preaching the Word of God, somebody might beat them up. I was worried about that, and I prayed about it. And I didn't want that to happen. And then I realized that I'm going to speak on the Coffield unit for just a minute. I want you to picture it. If you haven't been inside of one of our facilities, 80 acres inside of a fence, 4,039 convicted felons are in there tonight. I have close to 1,000 staff members, and I feel like I'm responsible for every single one of them. And so I want to do everything I can to give them all the tools they need to go back into society. In 26 years, I've always thought that our agency, and I love this agency, I've always thought we do a great job of rehabilitating offenders and putting them back into society. I always have. But I always knew there was a missing element. I heard the lieutenant governor say, we were missing an element. We were missing God. We're sending them out there with substance abuse counseling and everything else, but we're not sending them back out there practicing their religion. So what I think, Grove, that is going to happen, that we're not going to probably be able to put a statistic with, is I've always wondered, how are we going to rehabilitate the community? I told you my brother went to prison 3 times. Every time he got out of prison, guess what he said? I ain't never going back. And when he got back into the neighborhood and the friends started stopping by and the culture he was in, he ended up right back. That happens to a lot of guys. Well, I think, this is just my opinion, but from what I've seen inside that facility and what's going on right now with the field ministers, I think that what they're creating is a bunch of missionaries that are going to go into the neighborhood and they're going to rehabilitate the neighborhood themselves. And you're going to see that 138,000 keep going down over the years to come. That's what I believe, if we keep doing what we're doing. My field ministers, I meet with them every week, and I can't tell you the amount of work they actually do. When I was on Beto and I introduced them to the staff, like I told you, they, about a month went by and I'd see a field minister, I'd go down and meet with them, and they looked like they'd been awake for about 5 days. And I finally figured out that we were working them too hard. I had to get them some rest. So then I had to go to the staff. That's how God worked. He put them to work. And I had to go to the staff and say, hey, we got to let these guys rest a minute. Let them get some sleep, because they were calling them out to talk to guys. We pass out mail at 8, 9 o'clock at night. And if a bad letter comes from home, something's going on, that's pretty depressing. Our volunteers and our chaplains and myself and a lot of the staff, we go home. I heard Grove say it, that field minister is there 24 hours a day, so the staff would go call him out and say, hey, come out and talk to this guy. He got some bad news from home and he needs someone to speak with. Those are the kind of things that they're doing. My field ministers on Coffield, my 4 there, they heard that I was speaking at this event tonight. And Wednesday, I was at a warden's meeting. I normally meet with them on Wednesday, so I didn't get there Wednesday. Thursday, they sent a message to me that said, we have got to talk to you. So I said, okay, let's get them into the chapel and I'll go down and talk to them. And they said, hey, we heard you're doing this big speech and, we're going to help you out. And I said, all right, how are you going to help me? And they gave me a list of the things they do on Coffield. I really didn't need the list. I watch them and I see what they do. But I wanted to share some of it. And Mr. Collier hit on a little bit, but they do tier walking. I told you a while ago, there's 4,039 offenders on my facility tonight. That's a lot of people to go try to walk and impact for 4 people. What Grove missed a while ago is when they get off the bus, we're shaking hands and then we're picking up the phone and asking him, can you get me some more? Can you hurry on through the seminary? But they're talking to those guys and I watch them and it's pretty amazing, because I didn't know that they would accept them. I'm going to tell this story. It's kind of funny. It may make my wife cry. By the way, this is my wife, Tracy. She's been in the school system for 20 years teaching. And you want to talk about making a difference. I read the email she gets from the first group of kids she taught that are now working. And so that, to me, that's teaching, when they follow you and want you to know. Me and Tracy have 2 kids. And up until last year, for about 12 years, we had this big old beautiful lab retriever dog named Duke. And he just became one of the family members. This dog was so faithful. He would sit out and just sit and watch our kids play. If they moved, he moved with them. But as you know, a lab is a retriever. And a retriever does what? They retrieve things. And it might not be your things they retrieve. They go to the neighbor's yard. They go everywhere. Well, I'm going to say this. Duke had this really bad habit. Now, me and Tracy, we've been in the youth department. She's in the children's department at church, and we've been teaching kids for years. We don't keep any alcohol in our house. We do not drink, okay? Duke had this bad habit of retrieving beer cans. And the great big tall ones he would always bring and set them out around the yard. And Tracy would say, we got to get those up. The preacher could stop by. And so we'd run out there, and up the hill my in-laws live, and my in-laws, they sometimes would stop and pick the beer cans up and call and tell us, hey, we stopped and picked the beer cans up in case the preacher comes by. My point to that story is this right here. Just like we picked up the beer cans so the preacher, we hid things we didn't want the preacher to see when he comes by. You ought to watch a cell block react when a field minister walks in the door. Yes, another peer. They're in the day room and they go, hey, here comes the preacher, put that up. And it's really neat. I enjoy watching it. I really do. And because the guys are reacting. And when I left Beto, I had a stack of mail this high, letters from inmates, and they were asking, how do I become one of those guys? And some of them can't do it because they don't have enough time in the system or whatever. But I'd always write back to them and say, you don't have to go through seminary to do mission work. You don't have to go through seminary to talk to the guy in the cell next to you and tell him to start doing good and behaving, to worship God. But that's tear walking. They do mentoring, teaching offenders how to achieve goals and become a positive influence on others. It's kind of neat. I had a kid come in on the chain, and I used these field ministers to my advantage, and he was so young. I had to ask him, are you even old enough to be in prison? That's how young he looked. And I was worried about how the population would accept him. So I moved him down by one of the field ministers. I called that field minister in and said, look, I want you to watch over this kid. Help him adjust. And that kid's doing fine. He's been in the system now about a year, I guess, and he's doing fine. But he has taken to that field minister. And that's who he goes to for advice. And they read the Bible and they study. They do peer education training, teaching offenders about decision making, disease prevention, and prison safety issues. They do GED tutoring. I love that. These guys been through seminary. They're not dummies. They're smart. Use all of your skills that God gave you, and that's what they're doing. They're teaching guys how to get your GED, stay out of prison, go to work. Job skills, providing instruction on resume writing. Field minister out there doing that. While he's talking about God, he's teaching them how to write a resume, how to search for jobs. Personal finance, teaching them that. I love this right here, Great Commission, training Christian offenders how to start and conduct informal Bible study groups and prayer circles. I have 25 cell blocks on the Beto unit, on Coffield unit, 25. When the 4 field ministers hit that facility, there was prayer circles going on 4 of those cell blocks. Right now, there's prayer circles going on 23 of those cell blocks. So I only have 2 that it's not happening on. That's pretty amazing. Here's some future programs. These guys are always thinking ahead. That Wednesday meeting I have with them, sometimes I just want to go in there and find out, hey, what are you guys doing? Are you doing all right? And when I go in there, hey, Warden, we got this great idea. Here's what we want to do next. Mr. Collier talked about at Beto the Gatekeepers program, and that's what we're starting at Coffield now, and it's already in play. They're already actually doing it. And that's where when new arrivals come in on the chain bus, we give the field ministers time. They group up, 4 ministers, and they talk to them and help acclimate them to the prison environment. But they talk to them about the vocation training, the chaplaincy programs, and the things that's going on there. Follow Christ is a new believers class that teaches the commands of Christ, provides spiritual accountability, and how to use a basic Bible study method. Check this out. I had a field minister. I was reading the Bible, and I decided I wanted to read it different last year. I wanted to read it from start to finish because I would jump around. And I prayed to God, and I said, why do I not understand everything you're trying to tell me in here? And he said, because you won't start at the beginning. Start at the beginning and read it through. And so I started reading it, and I always wanted to read Revelation, see what's going to happen at the end. But I couldn't understand it because I didn't know how it came about. Now I do. And really, to be honest, I owe that to one of those field ministers because I was reading the Bible, and I went into the chapel one day, and I said, you know what, I really just don't understand everything I'm reading. And he said, well, first of all, you're reading the wrong Bible. You need a good study Bible. And he led me in the right direction to one, and it was the best move. I started carrying that Bible and started reading it and reading the explanations at the bottom, and I had a whole new understanding. And it's just amazing what they're doing. 4 Fields Discipleship is a missionary training program that equips Christians with practical skills for practicing the Christian faith. I've never seen a program like this. And I know it will, Grove. It's just going to keep going. It's going to keep growing. And I'm going to close with this. I'm not that smart. I'm not smart enough to put statistics on how many people's lives are being saved as a result of what the Heart of Texas Foundation and the field ministers are doing. I can't do that. God can. And I just feel like that one day, I've always had this belief, I'll never stop a man from coming to Christ. So whatever program you want to bring to my facility, if you're bringing them to God, hey, it's welcome while I'm there. But I think that what we all should hope for is that one day we're standing there, Grove, and the man that does know the statistics, he says, well done, good and faithful servant. Because of you, thousands of people know me. Thank you.